with some questions. All right, so we are live on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, and YouTube. Tonight, I have with me Marianne Marriott and Jeannie McCulloch, licensee, insolvency, and mortgage broker. So we got some questions lined up here and some good content. I hope that you guys will all enjoy if you're watching us live or watching the recording at a later date. I'll let each of you guys have a little quick introduction of yourself. So I'll start with Marianne. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself and who you work for.
Sure can. Hi, everyone. I'm a licensed insolvency trustee, which is our new fancy name for trustee in bankruptcy with Allen Marshall and Associates right there. And basically, I'm also known as Dr. Debt because I help people have happier, healthier finances. So basically, I help people who are struggling with some kind of financial difficulty find solutions. And yeah, we're here to help. We can help.
Excellent. So, Jeannie, I'll get you to do a little intro and what you do and who you work with.
All right, thank you so much, Eric. Well, my name is Jeannie McCulloch, and I am Ideal Mortgages, Mortgage Jeannie. I love to help people refinance and get their mortgages on new homes and a variety of other things linked to mortgages. So, if you're wondering about anything that has to do with a mortgage, getting working with one you have existing, I'd love to chat. I'm here to help.
Jeannie's awesome.
The mortgage genie at her best. All right, great. So I'm going to let's just jump into some questions, and I'll keep an eye on the comment section as well here on our other side. And if anybody would like to jump in and ask us any questions as we're going, feel free. Just jump in the comments, and we'll bring those up online as well. So let's jump in. Who wants to go first? Who do I pick? How about we have a little talk with Marianne first? So we have this question that we were talking about. What is the impact of bankruptcy versus consumer proposal on someone's credit report? And this was kind of interesting. I tagged you on Facebook because there was somebody asking something very similar to this earlier today. So I said that we were doing this live video tonight, and that hopefully she might join, or they might join. I don't know if they're male or female. Sorry. So maybe you could go in and answer that a little bit and tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So it's a great question. And I mean, the whole credit reporting system is frustrating to say the least. And so trying to navigate through it and figure out what impacts it and how it's going to impact you. And I mean, there's lots of levels to this, but I'll simplify it, as much as I can with a caveat that it does depend on a person's situation, how it impacts them. But basically, let me say it this way. So you either pay your debt in full as agreed or you don't. From a lender's standpoint, if you don't, it doesn't matter how you don't. So whether you don't through a bankruptcy or whether you don't through a consumer proposal or an informal debt settlement or anything else, it's still going to have the same impact per se on your credit report. Having said that, there are a few differences. So basically, and again, I'll summarize it first and then maybe just go a little deeper, but bankruptcy stays on your credit record for 6 years from the date that you complete the bankruptcy. And depending on whether or not you have been through a bankruptcy before, that is either 9 months or longer. And generally speaking, 9 months to 3 years. We'll just say as a standard, but it could be longer than that. So you're in it for 9 months to 3 years, depending on your circumstances. It's on there for 6 years after. A consumer proposal stays on your credit record for 3 years from the time you complete it. And typically, you're in a consumer proposal for 5 years. Okay, so you're in it for 5 years, it's on there for 3. However, forget that I said any of that for a second because, one, you can start to reestablish credit as soon as you are discharged from bankruptcy, sometimes even when you're in it, and you can start to reestablish credit once you've completed your proposal, sometimes even when you're in it. See how this gets totally confusing?
Oh, yeah.
So the way that I would really summarize this is that the challenge with a consumer proposals, generally speaking, will impact your credit worse than a bankruptcy most of the time. And that's the biggest misconception because people think, I made a proposal, I made a settlement offer, I paid more money, it should look better on my credit, and it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because your creditors report your delinquent accounts for the full time you're in the proposal until you make that last payment. And so you don't really get credit for making that settlement until it's done. So I know that was like a lot of kind of information in there, but there's so many aspects that I didn't want to just answer with that last piece.
Right.
Are you totally confused now?
Great.
I think it's awesome, Marianne. And honestly, Marianne is excellent at this stuff. And I've had a few clients that have used Marianne and then gone through to get mortgages. And I do think you do an awesome job, and you really educate them so they pick the right products and they get themselves ready to be reestablished. So
thanks, Jeannie.
Yeah, you're really awesome. I love getting your clients.
Thank you. Can I add one more thing to that, Eric, that I think is really important when we talk about credit ratings? Because everybody says, how is it going to impact my credit? And we focus on the credit score, but it's only one piece. And so I talk a lot about credit worthiness, and there's 3 parts to credit worthiness. So your credit score is one, and that was really what we just spoke about. The other piece is your debt ratio, and your debt ratio is how much money you owe to income. And what happens when you do a proposal or a bankruptcy is your debt ratio improves because the debt is reduced or eliminated. And then the third piece is your income or job stability. And so that's why I said at the beginning, it really does depend on the situation, because someone who declares bankruptcy or proposal and, has no income or hasn't been there long enough, even if they've reestablished, they're still going to have a hurdle. Whereas someone who has gone through the process, doesn't have any debt, has a good income, they're going to be ahead of the game coming out of the gate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great.
And for like Eric and I, where we are into the house side of things, one thing with Marianne that I find is that you've really taken time to make sure they get everything cleaned up, whereas other people in your line of work, trustees, may only do like a couple big things and then let them pay credit on their own. And what happens is they go bankrupt then in another 2 years because they couldn't clean up that stuff on their own. So if you work with somebody like yourself, it means that people like us who want to help people get homes. I mean, I've got people now that will look at you 2 months after discharge. Some will even pay out the discharge as part of the program now. So there's a lot, but you have to deal with the right trustees that do a good job. So it's all key on using the right people.
Well, I appreciate that, definitely. And it is frustrating. Like certainly on behalf of, everyone in the industry out there, trying to navigate people through the credit rating system is a nightmare. I'm fortunate that I've done a lot of research into it, and I've played around with it. I practice stuff on my own to try to understand it. And I do pass that along, to those that work with me. And, it's a lot. It really is. It's a frustrating system, as I said, right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's why I always tell my clients, I know a little about a lot, not a lot about a little, but I surround myself with the professionals to get the exact answers they need, and that's why I have you two here to have these conversations. I'm going to jump over to Jeannie, just related to that, because we did have this kind of conversation as well. So we have this question for Jeannie. Can a person with a consumer proposal or bankruptcy get a mortgage? Anything special to get that? It just can continue, I guess, with our conversation that we just had here.
Yeah, well, it really is important to have your trustee be thorough. Like, definitely, with Marianne, that's what happens. And it used to be you couldn't even go near a lender for 6 months after discharge. But there's a couple of new products because I think with COVID and there's been a lot more issues with people having to go to consumer proposals or different things. They are looking at some, depending on how well you've rebounded, if you're back to work. And like Marianne said, there's so many little details we'd have to look at. But yes, for sure, it's really not unheard of now to be back in the game and getting a mortgage, and me getting them set up with you, Eric, because I mean, like half the battle is having the right team. I agree with you. So people coming out, if they come into a new situation, get a mortgage, and then have a trustworthy realtor, then their chances of success are going to be so much better. So
Well, and I'm going to
Yeah.
bounce that back to you, Jeannie, because, I think you and I have a lot of the same philosophies in terms of how we help people through things. And one of the things I really admire about you is how you go that extra mile and you do those extra steps. And, let's face it, if someone's filed for bankruptcy or has a proposal, it can be challenging to get them financing. And sometimes you do have to go to bat for them and, fight a little bit and make sure the lender really understands the circumstances and some of the things beneath the scenes that you're not always seeing on the surface. And you do that. It's one of the reasons why I'm so comfortable, referring people to you so you can help them, because I know that you're going to work hard to help them to get that. And, and people deserve that. I mean, just because, they've had a debt issue doesn't mean they're not worthy of a mortgage. Having the house of their dreams.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Marianne. And it is true, because with the alt lenders is basically where we start. The story is the everything, because it doesn't matter. They can be high on the ratios. They can be a little off on the scores, but the story on how it happened, how they've worked to fix it and how they're planning to fix it. All of that is their journey, and everybody's had a different one. So if you're, everything is lining up and you're making sense, lenders are happy to help you get back into the game and start, off fresh. They really aren't, they're not really that tough, but like you say, you have to take the time to really educate them on each client, because every one of them is special.
Yeah, for sure.
Jeannie,
we see that in our business too, like on the buying side. Like, we do these love letters now for our buyers, and it's all about the story, and sometimes I tell my clients, pull at the heartstrings. Like, this is a difficult market, and we do need to show who you are and why you are doing what you're doing to reach your goals, right?
So does that work? Like, I've heard about it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was going to jump in and say, I've talked to a few people who sold their homes, and their decision was based on those love letters. I find that fascinating.
I had at least, I'd say 2 or 3 that we weren't necessarily the highest bid, but it was the love letter that made it, that made us the top bid in those sellers' eyes. And not all sellers, I have actually seen listings where they have in the instructions that do not send a love letter. So it's a personality thing too, right? It depends on the seller and their personalities. And I mean, the ones I've won, I had young couples buying houses that people had been in for 30 plus years. That was their family home. So we talked about how they wanted to start their family and have, I had one couple wanted to have a wedding in the backyard, and they talked about that. And that was all through the pandemic. And, that's what helped us win that offer.
Wow, that's amazing. I've heard it, but I don't know anyone that actually has done it. So that's great to hear. People can be so kind. You just we underestimate human beings in general. I think
you can see the difference too, can't you? From someone who sells their home, they've been in, it's been their family home, and they're so attached to it, and there's a lot of love there, and really they're giving that home to someone else. I mean, they're selling it, but you know what I mean. Versus someone who's flipping properties, they're probably not going to be as impacted by those love letters.
Right. Yeah, and exactly. It's a personality thing. It's, what is their situation? Is it their family home? They raised their kids from baby to they've moved out, and they're still there for another 20 years after, right? That type of person, you throw that in front of them, and you have a good story. And most of our young couples in Nova Scotia looking to buy houses have good stories right now.
I love the stories.
I do too.
I think that's one of the things I enjoy most about the work that I do is I always start with that, like, tell me what's going on, tell me the story. And I mean, I get sad stories obviously, but still it's I love people's stories.
I find it interesting. I've been dealing with quite a few immigrants coming to Canada, or they've been here for a little bit now, over a year, so now they're looking to buy a house versus rent. And just to learn about them and their cultures as we go through houses. And it's very interesting. I had a client from Nigeria, and she was talking about the window screens, and she kept calling them mesh. And I'm like, oh, no, screens. and it was like it took a little bit of while. It took a couple times, like figure out both of us what we were talking about. But just to learn different terminology as well is pretty interesting. What they consider something and versus here. I see questions on Facebook sometimes. A lady was asking the difference between a bungalow and a rancher. And there's
Oh,
a
Just
rancher
different
is something you
wording.
hear out west of Canada, but it's basically a
Yeah.
raised bungalow.
yeah. That's
Interesting.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's-
love the diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My
Right,
stories.
I think,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
you guys up for another question?
Sure.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No.
No, it's okay. It wasn't that important. I'm ready for another question.
Well, we could
We could just
go
chat.
bounce
We could
back
just
and
chat
forth.
all
Like,
evening. Like everybody just
that's the
tune in till
thing.
midnight. We'll be
Yeah.
here till the turn of
The
the
three of
clock.
us have done this not live like this, but we've been in
Yeah.
person. We all know we can chat. So
Yeah. Well, it's an important topic. Like, I don't know how you're managing, Eric, with all these bidding wars and stuff. It's scary to me as a mortgage broker. I mean, I'm trying to pre-approve my clients for way
Yeah.
more than what they plan to spend, and they think, "Oh, I don't need that." I'm like, "Oh yeah, you will."
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, I've been 15 years in the industry, so I've been on the complete opposite side. I was selling in Fredericton during '09 and 2010 during the recession. We couldn't give houses away from back then. Now it's my main focus is education and making sure they understand if you're pre-approved for 450, expect to spend 450 in this market. In my old world, the old days of my life, and somebody was pre-approved for 450, I kept them right around 300 because we knew back then during the recession we didn't know what was going on with interest rates, but they ended up keep dropping and dropping. But nobody knew that for a while. But I didn't want to overextend my client. But now it's like if you're approved for 450, expect to pay 450, but the asking price is probably going to be around 299 to 325
Wow.
for the
That's
most
amazing.
part. Like the average, I think, over asking in Halifax Dartmouth recently that I've heard is about 75K over ask. That's the average.
Wow.
Now, I know a lot of people have seen this on social media, is that there has been a house here in the area that was 700,000 over asking.
Is that real?
That's just
Yeah, it's
crazy.
real. I mean, I don't know like what, but there's probably a great story behind that one too.
Yeah.
Wow.
If we can find that person or their agent that's willing to talk about it, I'd love to have that conversation. But it is difficult, and the biggest thing is just making sure my clients are educated and knowing like the inventory is low. We still have a ton of buyers coming to the city, coming to the province, and not even just Halifax City. They're looking outskirts as well. They're looking to the rural areas in Nova Scotia. So the rural areas, we're not seeing the bidding wars in the amount like 30 offers. But we are still seeing bidding wars of 2-3 offers at a time that is pushing it, at asking or a little bit above asking for those rural properties as well.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
amazing.
It's
Wow.
interesting how we all work together, because just as you were talking about that, I'm thinking, people are coming to me because they've got debt issues and credit issues. They want to clean it up. And a lot of times they're young and they're wanting to clean up an old mess so they can get back on track, so they can get a house, right? And that used to be in some ways relatively easy. I mean, I've been in this industry a long time. I started back in 1988. So, I was in it at a time when I would say, basically the day you're discharged from bankruptcy, you can get a mortgage. I remember those days. And then, it's going to take you about 6 months or so, but, you'll qualify. Now, it depends on the timing, but now it's the price of housing. So they're one of the number one goals when I ask people, what do you want? What do you want as an outcome? I want to clean up my credit so that I can own a house. And, and it's hard for people right now because they don't want to get out and get in a huge amount of debt. So, their starter homes are just so much more costly than they used to be. It's an interesting relationship we all share, and it's an interesting time for people buying houses.
Yeah. I mean, the big conversation we have, or I hear from my buyers, is I don't want to overpay. And I mean, I show them the stats. I mean, since our market increased by 30% in 2021, and most of the experts, and even my gut feeling and my experience of 15 years in the industry, our prices are going to continue to rise at least into 2023 because we don't have any more inventory. You can't build fast enough. And that's our issue. It's a supply and demand issue, simple economics. So as long as supply is low, demand is high, prices are going to continue to rise. Yeah. So if you pay $450 today, that house is still going to be increasing in value through 2023, through 2024. And finally, maybe the market will start balancing in those next few years. But we're not going to drop. Your $450 house today is still going to be $450 plus 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Unless, I mean, there's always the unknowns. I mean, nobody knew we were going to have a pandemic. Nobody knew we were going to have the great move east during the pandemic. And now other things going on in the world too. So there is other factors. We don't have that crystal ball to see, but
I have one downstairs. I could go get
it. That's another topic. We're going to do that another day. But
I can rub the lamp, the Jeannie lamp.
The Jeannie lamp. Make some wishes. Wish they could build houses faster.
Yes.
Less red tape for new subdivisions.
Yeah. I just wish for lots of wine on Friday. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it isn't. I mean, we don't see the people's pay going up easily to match the price. So I mean, it really is a 2-income, maybe even more, getting your family, getting your parents in-law suites. There's a lot going on for people to get these mortgages now.
We're seeing more too. I know it happened in Ontario a long time ago. I have friends of a friend that did this, but multi-family houses, but not necessarily related.
Yeah.
It could be two couples that go in and buy a house together.
Yeah.
And then they have a cohabitation agreement. What happens when the mortgage is up? What happens when you sell? Who's getting, the deposit, down payments, and all that. But, you could get two single people, two guys, or two couples go in and buy a house or buy a multi-unit, which is even better because then you each have a unit. So even if one moved out, they could use that as a rental property, which then creates investment property or investment and income for them down the road as well.
Yeah.
The other person, especially if it's side-by-side duplex, the other person can continue living there. Is both mortgages are going to get paid because one's going to be rented, one's going to be lived in. Yeah. That's an easy way to get into the market.
I feel like you need to be creative nowadays to really look at how this will work for you, or make you money.
Yeah. It's I do a lot of refinances for parents who are gifting their kids money for the houses instead of waiting till they're older and sell. And it is like if you get locked in, the rates are good, and I mean it is helping these younger bunch get what they need. So, but it's something where that way you go into retirement with it's not a huge mortgage payment. We do it over 30 years, but our natural training has been you can't have any bills when you retire, but that's all changing as well now. It's a whole new life, a whole new look. It's a whole new thing. So
we've had that conversation on our team with my team here about refinancing and reaching out to our clients that even have bought in the last 2 years because they have equity in their house right now based on the market conditions, but taking some equity out and going to buy that investment property and using that as your down payment and your closing costs and starting building that. A lot of people are wanting to get into that investment portfolios, but that's a great way. There's people who are sitting with a ton of equity right now because of the way our market's gone that they could take some out. Like you said, over 30 years, that's not bad. And then you got a pretty good investment for down the road that you either sell or you continue renting, and you're always going to have some income coming in off of it.
Yeah. And I'm seeing that too in terms of, so someone comes to me because again they have unmanageable debt. Let's just say they have, I don't know, 60,000, and and I find this a lot, and it interests me. I'm surprised a little bit, because one of the questions I look at, or one of the things I look at, is, do you have a house? And, what's the tax assessed value? Because that's the only valuation we have on hand. And what do you owe? And of course, oftentimes there's no equity there, but we know what the market's like. And, I just spoke to a gal today and I said, there's a possibility that you could finance yourself out of this. And it hadn't even occurred to her. Now, it's a pretty new house. She hasn't been in it a long time, but the market went crazy since she bought it. And so I find a lot of people who are talking to me, I'm sending them back, to Jeannie or, to their bank. Although I'm a big fan of mortgage brokers over your own bank. And they're able and they're able to refinance and get themselves out of it. Or, and this is where I love this creativity aspect, because you're talking about that, Eric, in terms of buying properties, and Jeannie, you're talking about that in terms of getting them a mortgage. And what I often look at in cases like that, let's say this person can only pull 30,000 or 40,000 equity out and they owe 60, and it's not enough, but then we can get creative and we can offer a settlement, so it's a lump sum paid out all at once. They're out of it in 90 days. It's on their credit record for 3 years, going back to the question we started with, but it's not going to have the same impact because they financed themselves out of debt and they can reestablish credit more quickly. So I love the creative aspect. I feel like we're very much in a time where, bringing that creativity to find solutions is so necessary.
For sure. Yeah.
If you don't have like a creative mind, you just can't be like a robot in these kind of jobs anymore. You have to be thinking outside the box. Like, I never think when someone calls me, oh yeah, this is an easy one. I always know there's going to be, because the mortgages are so big.
Especially if I sent them your way.
Or me lately.
I usually put up a "I'm busy" sign for YouTube, but like yours are the most rewarding, because when people who are really in need to clean up something or really want a house and everyone's telling them no, I hate that word. It's just, I want a yes. So I want a solution. And I always say the same thing. Said it to my kids, my husband. Somewhere in the world, this has happened before and somebody got that. Yeah. So don't tell me there has to be a solution here.
Yeah.
And usually I'm so determined, as you two are also. We're the kind of people that I don't care if I have to go night and day, but I usually will find a way,
Mm-hmm.
So my husband just says, no more people can move in. There's no more of that.
Yeah, that's funny. We have that as a joke in our team too. It's like, we don't have any clients living in our basements. Like, we make sure we figure out everything. We'll help them every way we can and work, like, think outside the box for sure if needed. So
sometimes I feel like I just want to bring them home and just like, okay, just 6 months rent free, and then pay me back later. Gary's like, no, we got rid of the kids. They're not allowed back, and nobody else is either.
But he let you get a dog and a cat. And
He said no. He said no, but I already told you I hate the no word. I'm still in my defiant teenage phase. Don't tell me no.
No, that's great. I don't know. It's like, we have
what's our big question? Let's see. What can we ask Eric?
Yeah, I don't know. We did have a comment. We did have Danielle.
Yeah, I see that there actually.
Asking, is now a good time to list? And that was a question for me. Of course it is. As I've talked about earlier, we're at historic levels of inventory. So I think when I was looking earlier today, we're still under that 300 mark of active listings in the Halifax regional municipality areas, so kind of Halifax, Dartmouth. Typically we'd have roughly 2,000 active listings right now, at this time during normal market conditions, not in a seller's market. As you know, we talked earlier, like, the average over asking right now is about 75,000. We've seen properties, 150, 200,000 over. And then the one I talked about earlier, $700,000 over asking. So, properties are selling, and it's only taking about a week. So it's not like you're sitting on the market. Typically when we're booking showings, like, we're getting 15 to 30 minutes to take a buyer through. So, the listing agents are trying to get as many showings as possible. We have a lot of listings that are all set with due dates of when the offers are due by. And so all the offers come in and then they're presented to the seller. The seller then goes and reviews every single one of those offers that was sent, and they make their final decision at the end of the day. We're not finding that appraisals are causing issues as much anymore with killing deals. The appraisals have now kind of caught up because they use our MLS data, and they're using the same kind of data that we use when we're pricing a house or helping buyers understand where the market's going, and that's not even causing issues. So their houses are appraising at these over asking prices lately. So which is great. The seller's happy. They're walking away, the 100,000 over their asking price, which a lot of times, if these people have been in that house for 25 years, that mortgage has been paid off long ago. So it's all profit. And then they can take that and either go invest it into another property, purchase. The downsizers are going to condos, downsizers are going to apartments. But that's the other issue. The sellers that I talk to, and we hear this a lot, is I have nowhere to go.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I think it's a really good time to sell for someone who's downsizing, although they still have to find somewhere to go. But, certainly if they're renting or getting into a condo or, and people retiring, like, a friend of mine recently sold and pocketed a nice bit of money and, had a second property to move into. And, there's some people who are able to take some really great advantage of this market and really move their dreams, forward more quickly.
For sure.
And I know I get calls for people, that are afraid to sell. They're like, oh, we want to sell, but we will never get another place. And I say, well, that's not really true, because instead of refinancing and doing, renos, you could refinance and use that money for your down payment and closing costs. And now you're able to buy ahead of selling. Selling is going to be instant. So people are like, oh man, you can do that. I'm like, yeah. And there's also, if you're going to have a live offer on your home, within a couple of days, you can definitely do bridge financing, and it can all be lined up. Eric's really smart with dates, and people, Marianne, you're dealing with. There's lots of things people just are not completely sure how they work, and I think they're afraid. But don't be afraid. You can buy something.
And that's the thing. It's easy as having a conversation, with any one of us, because we've helped that our many sellers turn buyers and sell in the past year and a half. Basically, our strategy is we get your house 100% ready. We do all our professional photography. We do all the floor plans. We get it 100% ready to go to market while we're shopping. And then while we're shopping, once we get your accepted offer on your second house or your new house, then we flip the first house onto the market. So you're not going to be homeless.
Oh,
and as we know, you're going to have an offer within 7 days or less.
You better be prepared to move fast.
Exactly. And then, and then that's what I do is, Jeannie said, it's, align those dates and working with their mortgage person, whoever they're working with, so that I make sure I know if they're closing on the 5th and of the selling house is closing on the 5th and the new house isn't closing till the 6th. That's the best way to do it, because then you've got your money to go towards the next house. No bridge financing needed. But sometimes the dates don't line up for when the house is available. So then we get Jeannie or whoever I'm working with on the mortgage side to say, okay, look, we need to have this in place before all of a sudden, the money's not there. So it's again working together, and that's how we consider things. Is we want to know who your mortgage person is. We want to have those conversations to help line up everything for you.
Yeah, it really helps. And a refinance to get something lined up, it's really great, because then you can take the your mortgage from your existing house, and all you do is, if it's portable, you can port it to the new, or you can easily just do switches. There's all different ways of doing it. So, it's just a matter of, like, Marianne and you say, you just have to chat about what's the plan, what's your goal, kind of what are you thinking, and then brainstorm what's the easiest or most suitable solution, because they're never going to be the same.
No. Two
Absolutely.
situations are ever going to be the same. But I mean, there definitely is ways that we can help, and I think that's the thing is people aren't sure even who to talk to and who to reach out to get these answers. Because I've thrown things like that out to different people, and they're like, "Oh, I never even thought of that."
Mm.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
just thinking a little differently. But
Yeah.
I know we've had success with it for our sellers that have turned to buyers, and it's gone very smoothly for all of them.
Yeah. Well, I think when you got like a team, like different people like us that talk a lot, there's so many things that get mentioned that your brain's always trying to think of how to help. Oh, I wonder how we can help with that, Marianne, next time. And I think it makes it,
Yeah.
I think you do become better at your job because you're getting so many ideas and feedback and problems from areas that you're always thinking about. Oh, there must be a way out of that, or
Yeah.
into that or something. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's awesome.
absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
all the
awesome.
creative solutions I think that I offer and come up with, it's because of, collaboration and brainstorming and trying something and it didn't work, and, and just continuing to kind of stretch your muscles that way, so that,
Yeah.
outside the
Yeah.
box, right?
Yeah, I think it was the worst thing I was ever told was, or the worst thing the thing I hate hearing the most, especially when I got into real estate, was, well, this is the way we always have done it.
Yeah.
It's, well, it didn't work the last 6 times, so let's just do it a
Yeah.
seventh time. No, that's
Yeah.
not how it works. And like the collaboration, like you said, like it's amazing. I've learned so much from you two, listening to you in our networking groups, and my own team. Like my team's a wider range of experience of different location, geography, and just levels of knowledge of different parts of real estate. We've all learned from each other every day.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because Marianne, you're probably the same, but I find at Ideal, my guys that own Ideal, which is a franchise of Dominion Lending, which is a huge lending group, but honestly, they have 40 years of experience from the ancient days right up till now. And if I can't think of something, it's so fun to have people like that. You just pick up the phone anytime you want and say, hey,
Yeah.
what do you have any ideas for this? And they're like, oh my gosh, how come you never thought about that? I'm like, oh goodness, okay. But it is great to have that kind of mentorship from people that, like they've done so many things that they sometimes do have some great ideas, and they're like all of us. They just want to help people, and we're all in it together. Like we just want to help people. It's the goal is easy for all of us, because we're the same kind of value
Yeah.
system, right?
No, you're so right, and I mean, I think that's one of the things I really appreciate working at Al Marshall's, because I worked with a small family-owned business, like one firm prior to this, and it was just the senior trustee and myself, which is great. But now there's, I don't know how many trustees do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I lost count. 6, I think. And so, but we have a meeting every week, and everyone who's front-facing, meaning that we talk to people who call in and need advice. We all get together and basically brainstorm, what's going on. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have anything to share? And it's a fantastic way to just kind of put it out there. Who's run into this, who's seen it, what's worked, what hasn't. I love brainstorming.
Yeah, me too.
My group is, so at the De Silva Goss group, we have 3 team meetings a week. Monday and Friday, we have a 30-minute, 45-minute phone call as a group, and we go over our big rocks. So any issues, any big things that are going on our deals, because again, it's the collaboration. Somebody might have already gone through that similar situation or exact situation before, and they can give us a advice. And then same with every Wednesday. So we have, because of the pandemic, we've been primarily doing Zoom group meetings, but we're together for about 2.5, 3 hours. We go over our big rocks. We go over our deals together, help each other out. Where do we need help to get this done, or cover each other as well? We're great with that. If I'm double booked, I can call one of my agents or my partners and They can go show the house for me or send an
Mm.
offer for me. We all use the same system. They can pop into the DocuSign, finish filling in what I need them to fill in, and send it off. It's great. But
Awesome.
without that collaboration, I know I was a solo agent in Fredericton. It's a lot more work.
It's a big difference. Oh, 8 trustees in case anybody's offended that I forgot them. I was
Interesting.
counting it. Sorry.
Scrub
Yeah.
that. Scrub
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
No, it's there's so much going on. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, even our BNI chapter, like, I tried to get another one of our members come, and I'm definitely doing more with these guys. But every week I learn something new about everybody in our chapter. Every week, I think.
Yeah.
It gets me thinking too about how we can collaborate, how we can help each other, and Jeannie and I, we work together a ton. Like, you send me business, I send you business, but we're also going to try and do some collaboration of marketing. I'm doing stuff with Dr. Nicole with the chiropractor as well. Just sharing, and it's sharing knowledge. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all the little niches you don't think about. So, I mean, we make sense, right? Houses, mortgage, money, like we just fit cohesively and easily. But, there's other professions that you don't think they're natural connections. But, for example, Dr. Nicole, chiropractic, I was on a speed networking event today with BNI, and I met a naturopath. And, I'm dealing with people with financial challenges, difficulties. Well, it's only one piece. It's related to something else. So, job loss, mental illness, physical, disabilities, I mean, you name it. So there's all these other factors that are happening. And I mean, you can just collaborate with so many different groups of people and, work together to bring the best service to your clients.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah. All right. Fire
I do
away.
have, I'm going to throw this one to Jeannie, because we've had this, we got cat or dog issues.
Dog is going.
My dog came up, but he was quiet, so he's just laying there looking at me. Hi, I see you, and his tail's wagging.
Our Gary just got home, and the dog is like crying for some kind of love, because he's like, you're not loving me enough. But,
yeah. All right, Jeannie, I do have a question. I'm going to throw up on the screen here for you.
Oh no, not that.
Still something a little different. It's a little easier. So basically, can you explain to us, right now, how much time does a buyer need to provide that lender to approve the deal, and the key factors for that finance letter involved for you to even give that to them?
So that's a great question, and it's starting to warm up again. It's not been as crazy as last year, but now we're coming into spring, and I can feel it already, the amount of stuff going on. Basically, though, if somebody wants to be pre-approved, the easiest way to do that is to kind of be proactive. And when you're submitting your application, which mine is online, but I can do PDF, whatever. But if you just give some of the information, I'll always ask for a couple of pay stubs, letter of employment, couple of years of T4s, because the lenders are really concerned about how you're going to pay this mortgage. And if you have those few things to do with your income and just your financial stuff, if you've got a house, you'd need a mortgage statement too, because they want to see what you owe. But you don't need a whole lot. Basically, I can get a pre-approval letter out just by looking at what the client needs and kind of what their pay is. That's enough for me to pretty much be able to get a pre-approval letter out the door. If a deal goes live, like Eric likes to do to me, which I love, and usually, like today I had one, they called and said, yeah, we don't like our bank. We want you to close our house. And I'm like, oh, well, when is it closing? next Tuesday. So I like challenges. So I called up one of the owners and I said, look, I'm desperate. I want, these people don't like their, bank. I want to take this over. And they were like, oh my God. But guess what? They made it happen. So wow. I guess that's an actual finance letter and closing. So it can be done if you provide the right, these people were lovely. They provided everything fast. But I would say 10 days always gives everybody time for a inspection and an appraisal should they need it. I'm with Eric. A lot more things are auto appraising because there's more out there that have sold, but you still want to be careful because that is such it's such a pain for the agents like Eric. I know when I have to say, oh my gosh, we need 2 more days, or giving a finance letter saying pending an appraisal. I mean, it's just so stressful for everyone. But I mean, 7 to 10 days. The lenders all ask us to have all paperwork in 10 days ahead. So somebody that needs a fast close, I mean, they need to be ready to provide information really fast so that we can get it in and approved within the 10 days. But I mean, they're fast. If they send the stuff on, fast, I'll make sure it gets in there. So that's kind of it. And always money, a little bit of info on the deposit for the down payment. That's important as well. So yeah, I'd say.
So maybe you answered this, but I think you did, but I'm just going to kind of pull it out. So what are the big delays? Like what are the 2 or 3 things that are really just going to delay this whole process?
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking of a little devil's advocate type thing.
Yeah.
If they provide their letter of employment, which they need from their employer, the lender will always call for a verbal confirmation. So if the number on the letter is not a proper number to the right person, or if the person is now on vacation and just wrote the letter and ran away, that is a problem because they cannot, they have to verbally confirm. It's just with all the fraud and things that have happened, they really need that verbal to happen. And also they need to have like 3 months of bank statements where they can see that the deposit's been in the bank for 90 days, or we can get an exception to have their pay adding up, until closing. There's exceptions for a lot of different things, but you do need the employment, the bank, the proof of income are the key things. But that letter can be devilish if the number on it is not right, or the person's name is wrong, or if they send an email with no phone number. That is just trouble.
So maybe I missed this. So the appraisal. So were you saying that you don't need to have an appraisal, or you do need to have an appraisal?
Well, the choice for an appraisal is a condition of the lender. But what happens is the lenders do an automated appraisal for a lot of homes if there's data, and especially in HRM.
Okay, so they can kind of pull the information. I think you were saying that, Eric, like on the MLS.
They use our MLS data.
But the problem is if the house is 800,000 and the best comparables all went for 4 or 5 because they're old, they'll ask for an appraisal.
Okay. And are people getting hung up on that? Because I know I've had a few people looking at trying to do a refinance so they can avoid talking to someone like me. But it seems to be a sticking point. It gets hung up, and the appraisals seem to be taking a long time, which surprises me. Yeah, and that surprises me a bit because there's less inventory. So what am I missing about that?
Well, I would say for my end of things, because it's on refinances and purchases.
Refinances, of course.
Right?
Lots of that going on.
But that being said as well, I mean, with low inventory, there's so many, only so many appraisers that do certain areas as well, which makes it hard. So.
Okay. Yeah. But that would make sense because there's more refinancing happening. You're needing the appraisals for the refinancing. Yeah. So that's gumming up the works.
And that the thing is with refinance, because they're not CMHC approved, they always have 20% equity staying in the house. They need the appraisal because there's nothing to protect them, right? The lender.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Another thing on that too, Jeannie, is you don't get the opportunity to pick your appraiser every time either, right? Sometimes it's the bank that has their own choice appraisers and that they choose from. Is that correct?
The banks, yes, like we do deal with several of the major banks, and they typically will pick their own. But in general, most of the other lenders we can pick as long as they are licensed appraisers under NAS and also just I forget, it's another acronym, but anyways, if they're on that list, we can use them. Depending on what lender, there's only certain ones under those lists that they actually, like they'll say anybody under these names for their particular lending. So, but I know with like our Ideal Mortgage, the great thing about being with a franchise like this is, for instance, I can call and they have appraisers they've been using for years and years and years. And we can call, and usually with some begging and maybe baking cookies or whatever it takes, we can usually get them to give us a hand if it's a pinch to help out a client. They'll juggle dates around if they can and stuff. So I feel really like I've been really lucky and blessed with my appraisers. I love them. They've been nothing but good to me. So
yeah.
I give their names, but I don't want everybody calling them.
No. Keep those in your back pocket.
They're my secret weapons.
Yeah. You just have to keep those ones in your back pocket for sure.
I know, but I'm a sharer, so I hate to not share. But yeah, Ideal's got enough people torturing them, so that's good.
Oh, that's great. Did you have any follow up there, Marianne, on her?
No, I think you answered my questions, and
everything.
that was really good. And I was kind of curious about that time frame too, because I did hear things were going quite a bit more slowly. But then you're like, no, we can, generally 10 days we can do this as long as you have the information. And I mean, I run into that in my industry as well. We're trying to do, debt settlements to creditors, and we need to have the information, right, in order to move forward. Proof of income is a big one. We get hung up on that too. And, I just had a gal today who sent me her 2020 and 21 income tax T4s and year-end stubs because, I need to show proof of income and in order to be in that position.
Yeah, it's tricky. Do you guys call for verbals too, or how do you work it, or no?
He relies on you. You mean me or Eric?
For you.
No, for you.
No. As long as we have something paper, that's good. Unless someone's starting a job. If they're starting a new job, we might need an employment letter. But otherwise, pay stubs, T4s, tax assessments. I'm dealing with self-employed individual now that, I just requested the last 5 years income tax. So we'll have 5-year history because, that's tough right now because with COVID, a lot of people's incomes have went down. So we have 2 years, and you guys are probably seeing that 2 years of really low income. But, the years before might have been better, should have been better. And then even this year, seems to be picking up. But you've got that kind of lull in between. I suspect that's playing havoc on proofs of income for financing purposes.
Well, there's a couple of new products actually, it's a good one you brought up for people to be aware of, but you can actually, there's a couple lenders that you don't need to provide the tax returns. We can actually just use 6 months of bank statements and identify the revenue, and then we can prorate it for a 2-year period. So what it's doing, it's letting a lot of people back in the door that were being shut out with the traditional way of, doing tax returns. They don't use CERB at all. So it's really, it's really hard. Like, as soon as they go in, they're like, oh my gosh, this is all CERB, and they cross it all off. Oh, now he made $7 this year. I'm like, he lives in a house. He bought groceries. Like, what do you mean? Don't make me go there. But it's like, there's some good products that, I find that in new Canadians, if they have their PR, or a work permit, they can be just like a regular person buying a house now. There's such good products. Before there was like you had to put more money down and this and that. Now it's like a lot more user friendly for the businesses and the new to Canada.
Yeah, I knew that was a big hurdle for a long time ago. So it was before there was a minimum 20% down payment, wasn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes 35 depending on the lender.
Yeah, 35. I've even heard that before.
So, but there's some great products now, and I mean, it's so much better, and it's just a nicer welcome to the country. Like I say, how can we bring all our new people that are going to help us grow Canada and say, oh, by the way, you can't live in a house because you need to pay cash.
More hurdles, unfortunately. But like you said, I think a lot of that has changed and is still going to change too, right?
Well, yeah, and like Eric and I know from trying to help professional doctors or lawyers for business for self, they kept making them use tax returns, and it makes them crazy. It makes us sick because it doesn't tell the true story of earnings.
Yeah.
So now this business for self stuff is actually much better for professionals. Like it's
Right.
a lot more sensible than what they were doing before.
Yep, absolutely.
Was that a question?
I,
Or did we just make that up? Marianne
I think
made,
we just made it up. It's
Marianne
great.
made me.
I do actually. You mentioned something earlier about the whole 90 days money being
Yes.
being able to show regarding gift letters. Is that the
Yes.
same thing? So that still has to be sitting in that buyer's bank account for the 90 days, correct?
Gift letters are different. If the gift is coming, like say Marianne was going to give a gift to her daughter, then we don't put the gift in until close to closing. It's right then because it's a gift. But what happens is if you get a gift and say it's like a new to Canada person, maybe, but there's certain countries, Vietnam is one, and there's a couple other where there's no longer the gifts won't be accepted. So because of the way they treat those gifts, they have to be in the account. You really need them to be in there the full 90, like over 90 days.
Right.
It's just because there's so much trouble with the banking systems in certain countries. And so that's where you would see that. Typically, the person needs a down payment in the bank for 90 days, and that's nothing to do with the gift. However, with some of these mortgages, what I've got exceptions for, and this is a one by one, you have to see what they say. But say you had all of it, but 15,000, and you're not closing for 4 months, they'll let them accumulate that pay and use it for the down payment, even though it's not been in the bank 90 days. But you have to be able to prove that you can live somehow and save that money, right? And people are doing it all the time. So it is kind of great that the lenders are so good to kind of think outside the box, because they never used to, I don't think, from what I understand. So maybe I just beat them up till they gave in. I don't know what happened.
There's probably a little bit of that too from Jeannie.
I probably was like, why not? I need it, yes, please.
Well, and I think it's like any industry. I mean, you can't really blanket it, but you do get people who kind of do really go above and beyond and look for answers, and then you get some that play by the rules and by the book.
Yeah. Well, you're good at that. You've got all. I don't know how you help all those people.
Yeah, it's an interesting career choice, that's for sure. There was never a dull moment, and there's lots of interesting stories. And yeah, just it really. I'm a creative person, and so at some point I kind of related that to what I do, and just realized that I bring that to my job, that creativity. And when people are talking and telling their stories, and I'm gathering the information, my head's spinning, and I'm thinking, how are we going to get them through this? What are the options? And you have kind of like your set stuff, but yeah, I'm always kind of looking at okay, but how can we make that work really well for them and for the creditors, and and talk to them and get them to accept. And yeah, it's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually you got. Oh, sorry, Jeannie, you have something there else?
No, I think it's such a unique industry how we're all connected with these different people.
Yeah.
It's and it's interesting. Like I'm still learning. Like my head's still spinning about some of the things you guys are saying, and I'm meant to write stuff down. I was like, oh, I should ask her that, but I should. But no, we'll definitely be doing this again. But I think you kind of touched on this earlier, Marianne. But it's just going off your creativity and thinking outside the box aspect. We did have this kind of ready and prepared for you too. So I was going to throw another question at you real quick.
Yeah.
Because I've almost kept you guys for an hour, and I know
it seems like it's been 10 minutes.
Yeah,
here we are,
doesn't it? Eh?
Yeah.
So Marianne, this kind of goes with what we've been talking about off and on all night. What are what are options besides, not my options, but options besides consumer and or bankruptcy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I'll kind of walk you through my process. So once, when I'm talking to someone, I gather the information, there's a lot of time with just the story and gather the information. And in my mind, I'm already running through all the options. And so I pretty much take people, what I call from the top of the list down. Bottom of the list is bankruptcy. The top of the list is, basically not doing anything. In other words, continuing to do what they're currently doing. But, I kind of look at, okay, what happens if you continue doing what you're doing? Is there some way we can tweak this? So can you finance yourself out of debt? Believe it or not, some people can just consolidate and have never thought about it. Many people can do a refinance and either haven't thought about it, which is surprising to me because I would think that would be kind of the first thing someone would look at. Or what I run into a lot is people who don't want to refinance their house because they're paying down their mortgage and there is equity in it. And, the way that I always explain that is, we look at their debt and let's say they're paying an average of 16% interest on all their pieces of credit and they have, I don't know, $40,000 in debt, 16% interest. You can go and refinance your mortgage at a rate of what, Jeannie? Like 2%, 1.5%?
It went up yesterday, but it's still pretty reasonable. Yeah. I mean,
so why would you carry debt at 16% when you can carry it at, 1 or 2 or 3, whatever it might be?
Like between 3 and 4 because of their ratios aren't great because of all the debt.
Well, that's a good point.
I'd say between 3 and 4.
But even that, so you go from 16% to 3 to 4%,
4%.
and then and then I just say, whatever you were paying, just diligently pay it. There's a fine line between financial strategy and financial disaster. So financial strategy is refinancing your house to get out of debt. Financial disaster is doing it 5 times.
Yeah.
So the options are, budget yourself out of debt. Some people, quite honestly, have the cash flow. They can do it. They just don't know how. They've never learned. And people say that all the time. I've never learned to manage my money. In fact, I had one gal in who said, you know what? I always had money. My parents always bought me everything. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I've never learned to manage money. And I basically sucked at it. And I got myself in a lot of trouble. So you can finance yourself out of it. You can budget yourself out of it. And then there are other debt settlements. This one's a little tricky because you can settle the debt on your own. However, it's very stressful for people. You have to go to every creditor and get them all to agree. You have to make sure that you get it in writing. You have to make sure that they update your credit report. Whereas if you do it under consumer proposal, if the majority creditors accept, the rest have to. And there's some mechanism to make sure things are reported to credit bureaus and just kind of helping a person with that process. And, and I'll take this opportunity to mention that there's a lot of debt consolidation companies, consolidated companies popping up. Most of them are not brick and mortar. There's a few good reputable ones here in Nova Scotia and across Canada, but a lot of them, they are, their fees are ridiculous. And there was one couple I had in, they had paid $600 a month for like a year to this place. And they were still getting creditor calls, still getting collection notices. This place wasn't going to offer a settlement until basically they said, don't pay your debt for like a year and a half. Let your creditors get desperate and then we'll make a settlement. Well, the reason they were doing that is because they'd make more money. Well, this poor couple, retired couple, were beyond themselves with stress. They couldn't sleep. Like, I'm sorry. I question how anybody could do that to a couple. So just, trustees do the same job, but better, in not the same job, but we do the same thing, but with a whole lot of benefits. So talk to a trustee and, ultimately, if the option is something we don't do, then we're going to refer you to someone reputable. But I've just seen people really, go down that road, spend a lot of money, not get what they were looking for. And it's kind of heartbreaking. But, in answer to your question, really finance yourself out of debt, budget yourself out of debt. Those are really the only 2 options. And then it's some kind of debt settlement. And believe it or not, bankruptcy is a debt settlement. It's just that it's forced. The creditors don't get to vote. It is what it is. They get what they're entitled to through law. Whereas a proposal is creditors actually do get a say and they do get to vote. They're both debt settlements. Yeah.
That's great.
I think I answered that without throwing too many elements in there because, I can just talk all around it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think, the biggest thing I took out of that is if you have questions, reach out.
Absolutely.
Have that conversation with you
Yeah.
or somebody like yourself that, has that option or knows it and can say, okay, worst case bankruptcy. Like, I love that you had,
Top
before we
down.
got to the,
Bankruptcy is your last option, fallout position. It's also your bargaining chip, because if you're going to try to compromise your debt, the way it's presented is, here's an offer. If you don't accept it, bankruptcy is the only other option. This is what you're going to get. So those are tell people it's their bargaining chip. And, and there's other creative ways as well, which, I'll bring both of you into this. Reverse mortgages. A lot of people don't know what they are. They're not, again, to me, they're the bottom of the bottom level with refinancing, but for some people they make sense. I'm talking to a gal now that may be her best option. And, Eric, you and I are working on a file where they're looking to sell their house to get out of this. And, we've done a proposal, and the proposal is based on them selling their house. So we've put the creditors at bay to give them time to get their house listed, get it sold. It's going to be a win-win for everyone. The creditors are going to be paid out, probably in full or close to it. The debtors get some breathing room so that they can get the house ready, and someone's going to get a beautiful house once it's ready to be sold.
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's the biggest thing, is just getting that heat off their necks, so that they can think and say, okay, well, here's my next steps. This is what I need to do, instead of having somebody constantly, pushing on them and saying, oh, hurry up.
Yeah, and getting the best price, and then not having someone register lien against the property, which, again, is stressful and complicates the process on the other end.
Yeah.
And
the thing is,
there's so many options.
There is so much, and I know I've had a couple of foreclosure type of deals where we've actually have a private lender, who paid paid all of their missed mortgage payments up to date for them, so that they got them out of foreclosure, and then we got a mortgage, or we got them to sell it. A lot of times they'll sell, but honestly, that's another great one. I never even knew until I was talking to a colleague of mine. He said, like, Jeannie, I do it all the time. Like, they're foreclosing, but if you can get that paid up, and now there's, that's something that people are so thankful that they aren't going to lose their house. And there's all kinds of different solutions if you just keep knocking and see what you can find. But that would help your inventory, Eric.
Oh yeah. It's funny, like, you talk about foreclosures and stuff, and early pandemic, mid pandemic, I guess, 2021 ish. I always got the questions was, I'm just going to wait for the foreclosures. I'm like, yeah, good luck. You're going to be waiting at least 5-6 years. Because it's the people that bought in 2020, 2021, and now 2022. It's when their 5-year term comes up and the interest rates went skyrocket, if they go skyrocket, and they have to now refinance at that new interest rate versus 1.5, and now they're at 5%. It could be in 5 years. We could be looking at 5%, 6% interest rates. In the 80s, what was it? 18% in the 80s and 20%.
I know. I remember those days. I do.
I don't, but I know my parents did.
Well, I was working in the industry at the time. I mean, I was a receptionist, but I was working in the industry, and I remember it. It was crazy. In fact, I think that when I bought my house was 91. So it wasn't that high of an interest rate, but certainly it was higher than it is today.
Yeah.
My father-in-law said, you'll never see interest rates at 6% like when we bought a house. If he was here, he'd faint how low they were.
Oh, man. Yeah. It's funny. I think I've told you, Jeannie, the story about, so I bought my house in Fredericton before I was in real estate. And my 5-year term came up right in the middle of recession. So basically interest rates were actually just starting to drop when my 5-year term came up. And so we went into the bank, and the mortgage specialist at the bank was trying to sell me another 5-year term. I was now in real estate at this point, and they wanted to lock me in for another 5 years. And I looked at them, and I argued, and they argued, and I was because I requested a 1-year term.
Yeah.
Either way, argue, threaten to leave that bank. I'm like, look, you don't want to give me my 1-year term, I'll go down the road. Finally, they gave me my 1-year term. Show up, fast forward a year forward, show up at the bank. Yeah, interest rates have dropped, but they might go up. Let's lock you in for another 5 years right now. Yeah, you do realize what I do for a living. Yeah, you're a real estate agent. Great. Please give me my 1-year term. Argue. Finally got my 1-year term. Fast forward, 1 more year, went back into the bank. Here's your 1-year term. Never even argued. But
You wore them down.
every year, the interest rates dropped during that recession. Every year, my principal payments dropped. So
Yeah.
my monthly cost dropped every month or every year by doing that 1-year term. And then, of course, you finally had to eventually lock in for a longer term because interest rates then eventually did start to go back up. But it's interesting to see like what interest rates are now, and now we just got that interest rate yesterday with the Bank of Canada. And we're seeing people are asking now, should I be getting a variable or should I be getting a fixed rate?
Yeah, it just really depends on your risk tolerance. I mean, like they say it's going to go up several more times, but you can still get variable around 1.5, probably maybe a little higher with the increase. But the prime lending rate for the lenders, not the major banks, some have this, but was 2.45 before, and now it's 2.70. So the variable is really, really good. But like you say, over time, it's going to go up, but it's still not going to be 6-7%. But if you can get a good promo or a good lock-in, today I was lucky enough to catch a promo, even with the rates that went up. And I was showing the clients, between 2.89 and maybe 3 something. I was saying, but here's how much it's really different. It was only going to be $25 or $30 different in payment, if we didn't get the promo and we had to go with a new rate. And I think over time it was maybe $4,000 different in the interest. But all we had to do, we figured out if we did $5,000 or $10,000 in payments over the 5 years, like somehow a couple grand here and there, double up a few payments, they wouldn't even be out that much. So right now we're not in very bad trouble from this little 0.25. But I mean, a lot of people still like the locked in, and they just feel safer. But I mean, I'm really not. I don't mind a little risk myself. I'm a variable person, always have been. But I mean, other people just find that really nerve wracking. But the thing is, you can flip it into a fixed rate most any time if you get the right product. You've got to be careful that you get the right products.
And that's the conversation to have, and make sure they're asking questions to make sure they have that product. That because we know the next Bank of Canada won't be till Q3, so a couple months. But let's take that lower interest rate now. It might go up in 4 months, 3 months. Jesus. But at least you're going to get that a little bit savings here, so that you can put that extra away for when the interest rates go up.
Yeah, because I mean, you do save, and I always run amortization schedules just so people can see how much they'll save, or do fixed and do a few extra payments, and then you're still down at that rate. So there's lots of ways to look at it for risk adverse people that are a little more risk takers. Right. Just you can tailor any mortgage for that so people can sleep at night.
I was getting ready to hit mute because the plow's here, and I knew the dog was going to bark, but I didn't hit it fast enough. He scared me. And I was going to say that's also and he's here. I'm petting him now to keep him from barking. I was just going to say that's the reason, talk to Jeannie, talk to a mortgage broker, because they have access to, they can look at the different financial institutions and the different products. And, and not that if you go to one place, they're not going to look around. But, again, we already established not everyone is equal. Some people just go, they stick to the rules. Some people go outside of that, and you want to get the best advice possible. You want to look at all your options. You want to look at, all the possible things that you can do, and make your decision from there, not just one thing or one or two things.
Yeah.
It's even for myself, like when I have a new buyer, if it wasn't a direct referral from, like, say, Jeannie or somebody I know directly, and there's just a person I've met at an open house or wherever, one of the first questions I ask is, what's your interest rate? What are you locked in right now? And I can say, look, I can always tell, like, they might be dealing with the direct bank. So obviously they haven't been able to shop around with, like you, Jeannie, who can take that in product and find different areas or different products to work for them. But I always say, like, look, I'm not going to steal you. Like, if you want to work with that person, that's great. But, you might want to have another conversation just to get a second opinion and see what additional rates and what else you can have. Maybe because a lot of times we have the conversation that it's not necessarily the rate, but it's the product that surrounds that and what happens, right?
Yeah.
If I had a client, they're like, they were immigrants. They've moved to Halifax. They've been here for a couple of years. They bought a house, but they don't know if this is going to be their forever location. Like, they might go to Ontario, or they might go further west. So they're like, well, they were worried about locking in. I'm like, well, you need to have the conversation. You need to ask, like, can I port this mortgage? What's my penalties? Like, what's all this, like, all these extra things? And they said the person they were dealing with prior never mentioned anything about.
Yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of times people have no clue what to ask. Like, I think you just hit the nail on the head, because a lot of times people don't know what to ask. And, I'm always telling people, and I think this is too, again, kind of where we come in as a group, just you're in discovery phase. I'll often tell people that, because they'll come to me for advice and what should I do? And I'll say, you should explore all your options. So you've talked to me, what your follow position, because again, I'm the follow position gal. So your follow position, and there's two options that you can choose from. Now go talk to the mortgage broker and just see what's possible, and see, if you can refinance, and go talk to Eric and see, if you can sell, and then if you can sell, can you buy? And then go talk to your banker. I always tell people, go talk to your bank and just say, what can you do for me? Here's where I am. How can you help? Don't get into a big story. Just how can you help me? And, and ask your bank this, or this. And I always give them phrases to ask and information to ask, and just go get information from a bunch of sources, sit down with it, then come back to us with questions. And that way you can make a decision from an informed place. And a lot of people just go and do something because they're doing something, but it's not necessarily the best thing for them.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, that's one thing about rates. The best rate is not always the safest product. And I rarely ever start a conversation off with, here's the rates today, because who cares about the rates if you can't get out of the place, if you lose your job, or if you get sick, or if you move. I mean, to me, you got to understand the journey, the plan, and then you can start looking at things. Because, I mean, when you're talking 0.25 or these piddly amounts, honestly, like, if it means that, you're going to get a product with no penalty if you move over 0.25, you need to go with the right products. Save yourself the cash, right?
It's funny. We break it down sometimes as, especially when we're looking at numbers of, like, for a buyer purchasing at X versus going another 5,000 higher. We can break that down, and we're like, sometimes it's a matter of, the cost of 2 Starbucks coffees a week.
Absolutely.
We break it right down to a week. It's a lot of people do a weekly
spend
budget.
a lot of money on coffee. Sorry.
You think though, right?
Side
but,
note.
You say, okay, you could win this house if you go an extra X over, and it's going to cost you, breaking it all the way down, just 2 less Starbucks coffee a week. Can you handle 2 less Starbucks coffee a week to get the house that you want in the neighborhood you want, with the garage, with the pool, with everything, right? Yeah. And when you break it down that low, that level, you're like, oh, really, that's nothing. Yeah. And when you're looking at a sale price of, 100,000 to 105, or that's not much when you
Yeah.
break that mortgage down that
No.
low.
Now you have to stop buying those 2 coffees a week. Thin line, financial strategy, financial
I just give
disaster.
the suggestion. I give the suggestion. What you do with your coffee habits, that's up to you.
But really, I mean, I kind of, tongue in cheek, but I make that point because, this is, I mean, to me, that's the backbone of, someone struggling financially, not getting themselves back on track is just making those little decisions. Like people think they have to make really big decisions, but a lot of times it's the really little decisions that have the big impact.
It is.
Yeah. And sticking to it and having a plan. That's a whole budgeting episode. I'll do one of those.
Yeah. But you know what? It's true because go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then you need the accountability partners. And
Well, I've seen some of the discharge paperwork where, you'll see the original plan my clients have shown me, and I'm like, whoa, did they really make you, because, they'll have like miscellaneous or, things, and then, they've kind of circled what they're trying to not, save money. And I'll go, did they actually make you give up smoking and give up? They're like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe the things I had to do to get through this, whatever. And I'm like, oh, they sound pretty cruel, those insolvency people.
No, we don't make anybody give up anything.
I know,
it's entirely their choice.
I know, but it is so
but we
funny.
do make them report it. And I love this about bankruptcies, and you don't do this in proposals most of the time. And I'm a little sad that we don't, because when you declare bankruptcy, you do have to fill out an income and expense form, and you have to put your expenses. And it's not because we scrutinize your spending, because we don't. We have to track income for particular reasons. But honestly, the feedback from people when they do that, I love it, because they come in, they go, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much I spent on ... And coffee's one of them, and food outside of the house. And it's such an eye opener for people because they don't do it.
Well, that's what they say. They
love it.
Jeannie, we had no idea.
They had no idea.
Till we sat down with Marianne, and they'll have like stuff drawn on their pages showing me, and I'll tease them. I'll go, oh my gosh, would she make me give up my potato chips?
Nope, all potato chips you want. Okay, my favorite saying is, you can afford anything, you just can't afford everything.
That's a good
one. That's a good one.
You just have to give us something else, right?
But people do say that.
You have to make choices.
Yeah, but I mean, you help them really pick out how to do that, because they said we wouldn't even know where to begin.
Well, and I jumped on your coffee comment. Well, I didn't jump on it, but because when I'm going through the budget with people, and it's one of my favorite exercises, because I say, what do you spend on this and this and this, and some people know right off, and some people don't. And then when I get to food outside the house, I say, so what do you spend on food outside of the house? So going out, ordering in, and most of the time they're going, yeah, I don't do that. And then I say coffee at Tim's, and then people do kind of the mental math, and I watch them and I let them do it, even though I could help them, but it's much more fun to watch them do it. And I've had people go, oh my gosh, like, $100, $200 a month. I had one, $400 a month. They added up in their head, had no clue, $400 a month. That was a car payment. They practically fell off the chair.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy what we nickel and dime ourselves to debt. I mean, we literally do.
That's a good one too. Geez, you got all the cool. You got all the cool.
I'm getting my second wind. I won't remember any of them. Good thing it's recorded.
Yeah, it's definitely recorded. So you get all this. You can take your little clips and share them everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of interesting stuff. I appreciate getting to hear it all with you guys today. This is awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, this has been absolutely amazing. I thank you guys very much, both of you. I've kept you probably way longer than you anticipated. We're an hour 20. We're over an hour 20, ladies.
Wow.
Crazy.
Going. I'm ready. Marianne.
Yeah,
we could keep going.
Yeah, I know. We just have such a good time. We just hang out all evening.
Yeah, we can solve a lot of world problems.
Yeah. We don't have any current comments. We do have a few people watching us right now, but I am going to let you guys go here and let you enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening. I do want to thank you both very, very, very much for joining me tonight, and I hope that we can definitely do this again sometime. And
Yeah,
And
that'd
I
be
know
great.
we'll have a
Yeah.
huge. I think we have like tons of. We got hours and hours of stuff we could talk about, the three
I'm
of us, for
pretty
sure.
sure. No,
Oh
that was
yeah.
great, Eric. I
Yeah,
really
this is
appreciate the
awesome.
invitation, and it was, it was fun just to kind of hang out and chat.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
yeah.
you cover lots more stuff when you can just kind of flip flop around, and I hope
Well,
people
like
enjoy. Yeah.
tonight, tonight was fun. Like I mean, we had some questions ready to go for each other, but half the time we just answered them. I didn't even have to print them up.
We're psychic.
Yeah, there's a. Yeah. No, I like I said, I'm gonna be. This is recorded. If anybody has any future ideas, my guest, if you guys have future ideas you want to do with me or bring other people, you can definitely do that. But anybody watching, if you would like have a topic that you would like us to cover or a guest that you would like me to bring, please let me know, and I will definitely work on that for you. So I will leave it for now. And thank you very much for everybody that had joined us live and anybody watching the record. Hope you enjoy and reach out to any one of us.
All right.
Hope you all have a great night. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Bye, Marianne. Thank you.